Good afternoon, everybody. You know what time it is, another recap of the day. Today's video, we're going to talk about mostly value rotations on the volume profile and some order flow tricks that we were talking about during the morning stream for that first major trade. So for today, let's start off with a little snapshot of the market. So ES had a bit of a micro pullback. You tried to push yesterday's high, I should say. And you did. You were able to break yesterday's high, but that was about it. You just barely broke it, and then you pulled back and chopped out for the rest of the day. Same thing on NASDAQ for the most part. Overall, the markets were decently flat. You had a little bit of a gain on gold, up 0.6%. Bitcoin down about 0.6%. USD, JPY down about 1%. Euro up about 0.5%. Dollar down about the same. Actually had a pretty big move in the bond market. The bonds were up. The yields were down about 2.3%. So seeing a little bit of buy pressure in the bond market. We'll see if that continues into the rest of the week. Yeah, looking at the candle here, a little bit of a sweep on the daily for ES. Going back to NASDAQ, slightly more bullish. We talked about this yesterday. You had a very strong close above those recent highs on NASDAQ. And today you did break the high, and it didn't have as much of a sweep back to the downside as ES did. So it does look like a very small, very slow continuation of yesterday's price action on NASDAQ. Not so much of that micro pullback chop. But if we go back to the lower time frames, it does kind of have that micro pullback chop. You have a lot of that value trading above the high of yesterday, above the high of yesterday, above the value high. But overall, if we look at the profile, it has that bell curve. So it does have that micro pullback. So if you guys don't know what I mean by micro pullback, typically what happens is when you have a very strong trend day or a very strong imbalance day, like a P shape or a lowercase b, the day after that is typically a bell curve, a D shape, choppy back and forth style of a day. And that day, which I'm referring to today, likes to just kind of sit on the high. In this case, it's the high. It can't be the low if it's a bearish day. It likes to just sit on the high and kind of chop around that POC. So we have that POC right there. You just kind of chop around that POC. Very slight bullish bias today, obviously, because you have that push off of that POC. But overall, still kind of a micro pullback. So for the following day, we typically want to see value holding above that high or below that low. If the value is still chopping in that inside of the day, then you're just continuing that POC. You're still building up that distribution. Okay. So what did our trade plan do on NASDAQ today? We said holding above 751, we look for 858, 22,000. We did not get those targets. So typically when there's a wide range between my above level and my below level, that means there is a rotation there. So holding below 751, we look for 580. We didn't even get that rotation today. So we were looking for the rotation back down here. We did not get it. It stalled kind of around that POC node. So still just building up that POC node, not even rotating to that value low, which you could say is slightly bullish. If we look at ES, pretty much the same thing. It did look like it did want to finish that retrace, but unfortunately the day closed. If we had another few hours left in the day, it probably would have finished that rotation. So possibly we'll look for that tomorrow. But that would have been a rotation from 91 down to 52. So 52's here, 91's here. We were about halfway. So like I said, a few more hours, you might have finished that rotation, but unfortunately we did not. Okay, so let's give a quick recap on what happened today. So realistically, there were only a couple of trades that you could have taken today. And if you guys are watching my morning live stream, we basically walked you guys through this first trade damn near every single tick. I did some tape reading on the live stream. I typically try not to do too much tape reading because it's very mentally exhausting to give you guys the outlook every single tick. But we basically walked you guys through this trade the entire way, and that started around 10:08. So starting at 10:08, we had, or actually let's start a little bit early. Let's say 10 o'clock. So 10 o'clock, we started selling from VWAP, which looked like it was just kind of rotating the day, going back down to the value low. Looked pretty standard. Then it started to get pretty far away from that ADMA. The ADMA is that teal line. And right when that happened, I said on the morning stream, all right, guys, it's pretty far away from that ADMA. We probably want to bounce back, rebound into that ADMA, right? Kind of a snapback. So we snapped back to that ADMA, which was around 83 at the time. The low was around 74, so it was about a 10-point move. And at that point, this was at 10:09 a.m., you have to ask yourself, is this just a snapback to the ADMA, and we're just going to continue higher? Or sorry, we're just going to continue lower in this case. We're snapping back to the ADMA, then we're just going to continue back down, right? Or is this actually a bounce, and we're going to retrace this sell-off? So for the next couple of minutes, when you're retesting that ADMA, you really need to pay attention. You need to see where that buy pressure is coming in. Are the buyers protecting the ADMA? Is it buying above that level? And then when it tries to go back below the ADMA, the exponential moving average, if you guys don't know what I'm saying, the 8 exponential moving average, if you're going back below that level, are you seeing the sell pressure on the tape? Is the tape very red? I don't think it will let me go back that far, unfortunately. Yeah, it's not going to let me go back that far because I closed my platform and reopened it, unfortunately. But if you go back and watch my morning stream, we talked about it basically tick by tick. So when we see those levels coming in below, the price coming in below 83, 84, 82, is it being bought up? Are they protecting that bid? Or are they constantly staying below that bid? And they were protecting it. Every single time you broke back below that 84 to 83 area, it got bought up almost immediately. So that was a potential buy. Either when you saw that dragonfly candle that was well away from that ADMA, it was far away from that ADMA, you could have looked for a little scalp there. Or when you started to recover that ADMA and you failed the bear flag in the VWAP. We talked about these bear flags in the VWAP on a lot of my videos recently. And this would have been a good selling point if they were protecting that VWAP. But they weren't really protecting it. They sold it on the first attempt, but then they started buying up into it right away. So we like to be a short seller when you hit VWAP like that, but that setup was failing. So if that setup is failing, that means the buyers must be pretty strong, right? Okay, so at that point, the buyers were pretty strong. We can say either the good entry or the late entry. And then if you watch my morning stream, we walked you guys through this basically candle by candle. And the main target here was just a rotation. You were rotating back to that value high. And that rotation was going into, if I remember correctly, it was around 96 to 98. So once we hit 96, your main target was achieved. But we were still looking for a little bit more. We were looking for a breakout into 6,000 to continue that trend. And unfortunately, it just kept getting absorbed. If I go back to where that was, where was that? That was around 10:30. That was right here. So we had that node right here, which was kind of the POC at the time, and you kept retesting it. And you just could not find any buyers above that node. You were not seeing any bullish delta above that node. So that would have been a point where you would have taken profit already, but you possibly could have just full closed your trade once you saw that resistance. And the way that I walked you guys through it on the morning stream was we didn't full close the trade. We gave it another attempt. So what I said on the morning stream was your trailing stop loss at the time would have been around 85. And you kept getting very close to that 85, but you weren't stopping that trade out. So I said, okay, guys, as long as 85 holds here, we're going to give it one more attempt. One more attempt into that 97, possibly 6,000. So that's what it did. It bounced back up. It gave it one more shot. Unfortunately, it failed. So right here, that would have been where you basically full closed your trade anytime during this candle, if you were holding a long. So if you were holding that long from the bottom or from that kind of late entry point around 10, 12 a.m., this would have been your close candle. because it rejected that POC for the last time. You basically didn't want to give it any more than that. And if you did not close there, then it would have hit your trailing stop loss at some point during this candle here, from 90 to like 85. For the rest of the day, it's going to be pretty much a boring recap here. You were just rotating. It was just rotating back and forth on the volume profile. You can see, look at my TPO here. You see how clustered together my TPO is? My market profile? You're just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth all day long. So for the rest of the day, you were just being a buyer around the value low, around like 85, and a seller around the value high, which was moving around a little bit, but it was mostly around 95 to 98. So you were just really just chopping back and forth, rotating back and forth. So if you guys don't like trading rotations, you basically were not trading past, what time was that? Basically the afternoon. Past like 12 o'clock, it was nothing but rotations. But all right, guys, that is it for this recap today. Like I said, not too exciting today unless you caught that initial trade in the morning. But that is all I have for now. Hit that like button and be sure to subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace, everybody.